Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Zay. I'm joined here by my colleagues Dahlia and Bryan. Um, we are part of the Film Fetishist podcast. Actually, we are all of the Film Fetishist podcast. And for this week's episode, we're gonna mix it up a little bit. First, for our first section, we're gonna be talking about The Big Clock, directed by John Farrow from 1948. And we're gonna be focusing our discussion on um, two characters which are queer coded in this film. But once we've gone over that, we are going to move on to our second segment, which is going to take a trip down memory lane, and we're going to talk about a selection of other films that we've discussed this through our journey as throughout the film podcast. The films we're going to be talking about in our
What?
second
No,
section.
what? We are the Film Fetishist podcast, Justin.
Did I
How
say
dare you get your name wrong?
did I say the throughout the film?
You
All right, I'll
did,
start over.
you son of a bitch. I like that moment though,
Apologies.
we get mad at you.
Apologies. Your correction. We are not throughout the film podcast. We are the Film Fetishist podcast. Bryan gets all the credit, and that was my fault. I know what we are. I have a good, strong sense of pride and identity. But anyway, as I was saying, we have a couple of films that we're going to be also discussing how they're queer coded. The films we're going to be focusing on after we talk about The Big Clock is The Maltese Falcon, Tension, and then Double Indemnity. We're super excited to start this off. Bless you, Bryan. Bryan, with that big sneeze, do you want to kick us off talking about the name of the big clock?
All right, the big clock. I feel like just the name of that film alone, I feel like I don't have to spell it out to anyone of a certain age that like how that is just sort of like in some sort of like a double entendre.
It's an innuendo.
Yeah, exactly. Like they take one letter out of there. It's a very different phallic idea.
And all which we might add is like very like masculine and
Phallic.
I don't know. Yeah, phallic, very phallic.
Which I think phallic. It's just sort of a person way to, and that sort of like informs.
It's like hypersexual.
It's sort of a way we can like informs the rest of our viewing of the film. If the name itself can be taken another way, that means we can look at these characters in another possibly more, phallic focused way. All right, so yeah, if we want to talk about the name of the main, and then we could switch into like name the name. Like we have like just the main antagonist, Earl Janeth. It's sort of like everyone refers to him, not as Earl though, as Janeth. In the way, Jan, just like a small little thing to sort of like feminize this main character and to kind of read into that queer coding. Not the biggest thing in the world, but just a small detail that mean a bit. And there's a lot of queer coding that we can do in this film. Focus on Janeth as a character. Justin, I know this is a scene you really want to talk about.
Yeah. The first scene I want to talk about is when Earl Janeth kills the woman he's having a relationship with, which is Pauline York. And in the lead up to this scene, we see they begin to get into a conflict because Earl confronts Pauline about a man that she was seen with. And then her retort to that is,
what about you and the Otway secretary?
What about
You think I don't know when the stenographer, the elevator girl, the kid in publicity, the photographer's model? You think they'd look at you twice if you weren't the great Mr. Janeth?
And while she's listing these women, Earl kind of looks down to the like down and left, and like on his right side he has like this cigarette ashtray that he's kind of like fiddling with his cigarette like uncomfortably, but he's looking down as if he wants to say something to like say this is not true because he knows this is not true, but he also knows that like the truth is worse than, or is he can't tell the truth because it's worse for him than like admitting to these lies.
He would rather have her believe he's like unfaithful
than that he's gay,
else,
because he's also he's got this reputation of being this big, strong, badass like CEO, like ruthless CEO, and I think that he feels that would undermine his, like, being outed as gay would undermine his authority in his in his company. Now he's tolerating this kind of barrage of accusations, but then as soon as Pauline starts to come at him personally and starts to talk about how
You think they'd look at you twice if you weren't the great Mr. Janeth? You think you could make any woman happy? Have you lived this long without knowing that everybody laughs at you behind your back? You'd be pathetic if you weren't so disgusting. You clammy, ludicrous... No!
she talks about how like no one would even look at him. She says no woman, but she's under the impression he's seeing women. And then that's the moment that he looks up and you can see like the anger building in his face. His lip quivers, and then like she keeps on going and going, and he gets to this point, and he then just kills her with the sundial. And
yeah, like the moment like she sort of like attacks his masculinity.
Yeah.
When it kind of switches, he's like, I'm fucking done.
Exactly. It's the one thing he's insecure about.
Yeah, and it's like he's trying to protect and show that he's like a very straight masculine man by like beating down this woman who questions his like masculinity.
That as well. Yeah, exactly. So we have this compilation of like a couple different factors that are really important to look at. I think that first off, we show how much restraint he can exercise. We show him exercising restraint in order to protect his reputation, by like putting up with these accusations. This is definitely not the first time he's heard of it from Pauline. He's definitely not the first time she's talked about him having affairs with other women. But then we see that start to slip when she's actually attacking his, in a sense, his sexuality. But so and then what Dahlia was saying, like, Dahlia, do you want to talk more about that? I thought
I think that like in terms of like this scene and like him beating like a woman who questions his masculinity is very like indicative of like the pride that gay men felt like they needed to have, like to be these super masculine people who are not seen as feminine at all, because there's that really big trope that gay men are very feminine people, when I mean that's just a stereotype, but that's a stereotype that like really ran some gay men's lives this time. And this scene is like indicative of that want to be hyper masculine so that you're not even perceived as somewhat feminine, so that you're like outed.
I'm glad you brought that up, Dahlia. I also wanna bring up like the immediately preceding scene, or the scene that comes immediately after the killing, where Earl goes to see Steve Hagen and tell him that he killed a woman, but just like nonchalantly like comes in and says like,
Steve, I just killed someone. I've no right to come here, but I didn't know where else to go.
And then Steve just accepts it, or Hagen, I should probably be calling him, just like hears him, and then like reacts in this like accepting, like loyal, almost loving way.
Well, she's been asking for it for a long time. She's a regular little comic. She was one of the most generous women that ever lived. Then why did you kill her? I don't know, Steve. I just don't know. From here, I go to my lawyer, and then to prison, or even the chair. I'm sorry I disturbed you. Don't be a fool, Earl.
And I think that's where I want to start to draw some parallels, and maybe even suggest that Earl and Hagen, or Janeth and Hagen, are possibly having an affair, because the way that Hagen is so like incredibly loyal to Earl, and the way that he will accept him kind of suggests that like he could even be in love with him, based on this scene. And then in the end, Hagen says that he will testify against Earl, right?
Yeah.
So in the end, Hagen says he'll testify against Earl.
Stop saying Earl. Janet.
Oh fuck. Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been reading Earl. So in the end, Hagen says,
You insufferable egomaniac. You thought you inspired such adulation that I'd do anything for you. George, Janeth killed Pauline. You'll say that in court? I will.
And I think that that's kind of indicative of their relationship coming to an end, because Janeth has been using Hagen for all this time, and I feel like Hagen was emotionally invested in in having Janeth in his.
That's Hagen's residence. As your evidence, Mr. Janeth, it will stand up in court.
I doubt that, George. I think you've had a brainstorm. Anybody could have taken a cab to my address or have planted that handkerchief in my cigarette box. As for the maid, I think I can produce her if necessary. Earl saw her this morning. Didn't you, Earl?
In his life. But then once he realizes just how far this has gone and just how into deep he is, he agrees to testify. And I think that's similar to a lot of other arcs that we see, where in noir, and it's usually the good guys, but it's like we have a guy who's involved with this femme fatale character, and they have, you know, a romance, and they do whatever bad stuff they do, like Double Indemnity, they, like, you know, killed someone, and then eventually they come to the realization that they are involved with someone who is bad and evil, and they change their mind, and they redeem themselves morally, but usually it's too late for them. And I think that in a different movie, these two characters could have gone through that same experience.
Yeah, it would be like a femme fatale character, you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
exactly.
I think it's important to know that in this film, the femme fatale character is killed like very early on, like, which I think is very strange for like most noirs. But like the femme fatale is like there, most of the film is there.
And then you have like that fake femme fatale, which is the artist.
Well,
and no one is fooled by her.
I think that it would almost be like correct to like make the assertion that Hagen is the femme fatale of the film.
You think Hagen is? What about Janeth?
Great. I guess we're flipping that around.
Well,
I'm gonna say Hagen because like he seems like very doting on Janeth.
But it seems like Hagen is more like manipulated by Janeth than anybody.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason I think that is because Janeth comes to Hagen with the news that he's killed someone out of an impulsive like passion crime, not something that's premeditated. So there's no way there's no way Hagen could have manipulated Janeth into killing his partner. So I would say that it's Janeth who's the
I think
who's
there's
the
some
femme
comparisons
fatale.
there. I think there's definitely some comparisons there. I don't know how much that holds up, but I think there's definitely something there. But like Janeth as a character feels like more explicitly queer coded than anybody. Like, I mean, I think we had to mention it, like massage scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was some in this old bottle, Bill. Use it up. I'm tired and run down. I need a vacation. I should take an ocean voyage. Have you ever been abroad, Bill? It's stimulating. Different people, different customs.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that, Bryan?
I mean, it's just this very it's a moment that very much stands out when you're looking at this film for like queer coding, because you have, you know, Janeth stripped down, shirtless, you know, lying down with this other male character just positioned behind him, framed in almost a sort of a sexual way, just, you know, giving him a massage as they have this conversation, which it just feels like the most like literal scene of queer coding, essentially, is because it's this very like physical man-on-man action scene. I don't know.
Feels like it's a metaphor for like sexual behaviors between the two of them. You know, like they had the massage, and then right after they had a happy ending, maybe.
Yeah. Well, yes, massages automatically connote some sort of sexual interaction, and it's interesting that the masseuse is a man, because I think that in almost any film that's not intentionally trying to queer code a character, they would not cast a masseuse as a man.
That's a very good point, actually.
And then like on top of that, the speed and the pacing of the scene. I don't have it in front of me, but from what I remember, everything moves very slowly, and it makes it very seductive. So the massage itself is not we don't rush into it. We don't with either physically, like the characters don't rush into it, but also the film doesn't rush into it. It doesn't cut and exclude the parts of the massage that lead up to it, and the the sort of foreplay.
Yeah,
And
it's
it
a pretty
makes it
like
much more, it makes it much more of a
it's like an
sexual
intimate
moment.
it's like framed pretty like, intimately, very close to like Janeth and like this masseuse, like very right up in there kind of.
Yeah, it's like framed in an intimate way that you
Yeah.
feel like you could see with two couples as opposed to like two men who don't really know each other, which is what gives me like the implicit like the idea that this is supposed to gay men having.
Yeah, it's also like the masseuse himself, like who is a character in the film, like does not get like any like real anything to do besides like being sort of like grunt. I don't know. It's sort of like bless you. This sort of like unknown figure.
Does it not also objectify the masseuse in a way that a lot of like sex symbols in movies are objectified? So the masseuse is like shot, all the film form elements that surround the masseuse in this scene suggest that you could replace him with a woman and it would almost like make more sense for the time. Because I think that this is supposed to be kind of a secret. The queer coding is supposed to be a secret. And I feel like people watching this at the time would even be a little uncomfortable, and that's them picking up on the queer coding, like the audiences of the time. And then it's also like on top of that, Janeth is supposed to be a bad guy. And so when you see him in this vulnerable, like intimate situation, it's even more like uncanny to watch it. And so I do think that would, so I think that people at the time might have actually unconsciously picked up on it and maybe even commented on it, but like not really knowing how to put it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like to kind of move forward a bit, I feel like Janeth as a character is one that is quite like queer coded. I think his relationship with is it George Stroud?
Who are you talking about?
George Stroud. I think his relationship.
Oh yeah.
I like the way I look at their relationship. I definitely see a lot of queer code in that. Like I think there's a few scenes that kind of like exemplify that in my eyes. Like so like towards the beginning of the film, Stroud shows up at this meeting late and he presents this idea like to how they're gonna increase like sales or whatever, and like he's found this he's found someone that like everybody's looking for, and like Janeth is like, this is good, this is great, you did good, and like to show his like how proud he is, like how he's doing a good job, he puts his hand on his shoulder, like pats him a few times, which like if you're not looking at it, not a big deal, but like this making physical contact in this like to show like your appreciation, I'm like, there might be something there to that.
He didn't have to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Like he got up, walked behind him, and put his hand on his shoulder, which I'm like, definitely might be underlined.
Yeah, it gives me the idea that he went like the extra mile because they're like involved. Like that's like little moments of intimacy like that in this scene and the one that we were just talking about are kind of like we get the overall general impression that the movie is like queer coded.
It's like just a small moment, but like to compare, like to link it with like other moments where we already like
everything adds up.
Sort of adds up to it. But there's also more, I think, in their relationship. Like because later on there is there's a scene with George Stroud and his wife. They're having dinner, they're talking about like, oh, we're finally gonna get to go on our honeymoon. And like his wife tells him,
but sometimes I think you married that magazine instead of me.
If from like a non-queer coded perspective, you'd say, oh, he's just he's committed to his work. But like the magazine company is essentially Janeth, like really is. Mm-hmm. And like so like he's more married to him. Like Janeth is sort of the home wrecker of this relationship between the two of them. And I think that's even proving further on when Janeth is like convincing Stroud like to stay and like to not go on his like honeymoon again and to stay with him. And like he tells him like we worked arm in arm together, and he talks about like not letting each other down. Like he like really places like emphasis on their relationship, So when you look at it, it's the relationship between Stroud and Janeth that is destroying his marriage with like, not explicitly sexually, but like there's this underlying idea that this relationship between two men is destroying this relationship between a man and a woman. So I think there's
So Bryan, I see what you're saying about Stroud and Janeth possibly having some sort of relationship with each other, but I think maybe what could be happening instead is it's actually Janeth essentially sexually harassing Stroud, because this is now with the first scene that you talked about. I think that definitely could be it. I think it's like Janeth being overly affectionate to other men in a way that they can't come out and say like, oh, this is a little weird and uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, especially because like Janeth is in this position of power.
Yeah,
and like
exactly.
It seems
so it's
like
the CEO.
Stroud doesn't want to be a part of this relationship, but he's obligated to.
Yeah, and so
like
I don't.
The trope of men taking advantage of women in a sense.
Oh yeah, like
secretaries,
secretaries.
It's like the secretary trope, where like the secretary is a single.
And that's even mentioned. It's implied that Janeth had an affair with the secretary when he's having his fight with Pauline. And I think on top of that, I think that George, like almost all of George like loves his wife. I don't think that actually George is necessarily gay.
Yeah, I think that's
I think that he like kind of turns down Janeth, and that's what makes Janeth hate him so much. And then when he tries to leave, we see Janeth's attachment to George, because Janeth is kind of, I think, developing feelings for him, and he holds him hostage. He first tries to convince him with like, being nice, but then he's like, I will not let you leave. And I think that speaks to Janeth's character. Janeth's plural of Janeth is hard. Janeth's character is very controlling and thinks that he should get what he wants every single time. And he's also an extremely proud man. So I assume that George turning him down would have been a really big hit to his ego. And so yeah. And then, so Bryan, can you remind me the other examples you had of the first one? We have the magazine where he says that he's married to the magazine more than his wife. Georgette says that to George. I think that it's kind of, I think it's not that he's actually having an affair with that scene. I think it's more that he's actually this harassment from Janeth is taking an emotional toll on George.
Well, I mean, I don't think we have to look at it like he's literally in the actual plot of the film having an affair. I think it's just when you sort of break it down in like this sort of like queer coded perspective, you can kind of see this underlying idea.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's George is, well, I think that actually what's in the plot of the film is Janeth is actually interested in George. Mm-hmm. I think that because I don't think that Janeth is a monogamous character.
I know, but I mean, in the actual story of itself, like he wants George to stay because he is the one he has a project for him to like work on at this point. Mm-hmm. Like he has like this, like he just. I feel like
you could also draw the conclusion that he's all like really very he's attracted to George. I don't want to say in love because I think that fits better to his relationship with Hagen. But yeah, Dahlia, you said at one point. Do you have any?
Okay, so like on the relationship with like Hagen, I think that like a lot of these like relationships with this men that like he's forming in the last couple of scenes that we were just talking about are like really to like combat like the relationship that he had with his wife Pauline, because it's very clear that like there's like this whole concept, and I think I just thought of this actually, is that there's this whole concept of being lavender married, and that was something that like gay people would do back then.
What is that?
Lavender married is like when a gay woman gets married to a gay man.
Oh yeah,
it's hide their sexuality. And I feel like this like she may not be gay, but this could be like the semblance of like a lavender marriage, where like he got married to her to like protect himself, and now he's forming these relationships with like other men because he's like kind of had enough of pretending to be like this super masculine like heterosexual man.
So do
And
we
I
see
think
any?
like
So do we have any indications that Georgette might be gay as well?
I think that it might be like a possibility because it's like I feel like they're more focused on like saving their like image as opposed to like saving their marriage,
Okay,
which is like
that's
was a very big part of like being lavender married.
okay. Wow, that's I didn't then.
I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's enough there to say that like Pauline is gay.
I don't think that it's might
Uh-huh.
not be that she's gay. It could just be
Uh-huh.
that she's just like doing things to like protect him. Because like you
And
didn't
Or it could be
really,
that she knows. Could it be that she? Well,
yeah,
but the thing is,
it couldn't.
George. I don't think George is queer coded though.
Why?
I don't know. It's like a lack of indication because like I feel like the characters that are queer coded are so obviously done, and then George doesn't really have that much. That doesn't have as much like incidents where he's clearly like the perpetrator of something that is perceived as queer coded. You know, it's like it's not he's like giving the boss the firm hand, the touching the boss. It's like the boss is touching him, and it's like
Mm.
it's not like he's trying to stay at the company. The boss wants him to stay at the company. I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it.
I mean, but it could be that like he's just like a feminine man who is pretending to be straight. Like
It
that's very
could.
possible because like there's like that whole like trope of like feminine gay men just being like submissive.
Yeah, that's true.
I think
I,
that
I mean, and there's also multiple readings to it, so it's like these don't have to kind of exist in the same
That's true.
reading of this film. Like it's quite possible that one of them, like he is like there's one way to look at it where George is queer coded, and then the other way to look at it is with Jonathan and Hagen.
Okay. So yeah, I think just looking over the big clock in general, I feel like there's a lot of instances. It's like mainly centered on Janeth and his relationship with other men,
Mhm.
but Janeth is the most explicitly queer coded character. I think there's definitely arguments for like Stroud and Hagen to both be queer coded in relationships to Janeth, but again, everything sort of centers around Janeth.
Mhm.
And I think it's also important to note that like he is the main antagonist of the film. So to queer code him sort of like emphasize this idea that I think has been like consistently seen throughout Hollywood, not necessarily a good thing that they will and it just really isn't a good thing that they will frame the antagonist in this either this sort of like feminine way or this sort of like non-masculine, this sort of like gay character. And I think if we look at like the Maltese Falcon, I think that same sort of idea is there. All right, so if you look at Cairo and Gutman's relationship, again, they are like the sort of antagonists of the film, so it kind of fits into the idea I was just talking about. But there's a very specific moment in the film. So the framing of the scene is we have Wilmer in the bottom of the frame with Gutman and Cairo looking down on him. And in this moment, in the scene, Gutman is talking to Wilmer, being like, "I'm sorry, I have to do this. You were like, I thought he'd be like a son, and but there's only one Maltese Falcon."
Well, Wilma, I'm sorry indeed to lose you, but I want you to know I couldn't be fonder of you if you were my own son. Well, if you lose a son, it's possible to get another. There's only one Maltese Falcon.
But so in this moment, he's sort of taken on this paternal relationship with Wilmer. But it's important, I feel like, to note that Cairo is framed directly alongside Gutman in that shot. So it's like those two in that moment are both taking on this paternal, as a paternal, sort of like a parental relationship with Wilmer. So like that sort of is like a very subtle way of like queer coding these two characters, which I think in doing so is very important for the Maltese Falcon as a film because like we see Sam Spade, this guy, as like probably one of the most like like quintessentially masculine like noir characters that like out of them all this cool, confident, like strongly portrayed man, like man's man, and like against these two more these two like queer coded characters that are more or less masculine and more feminine. Really, so I think that's just a really important like moment.
I think that like something that like kind of has like the same like reminiscence of like a relationship like that is like in double indemnity, like the Keys Neff relationship is very similar to that in the sense of, like there's these two men that are kind of like really good friends or just like very close to each other in general, and then there's kind of like that semblance of like a more intimate relationship. Yeah, I feel like especially in like Double Indemnity and the Maltese Falcon, there's like more of that like homoerotic tension between these two men than there are in that between them than any other man in the entire movie.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, like Phyllis Dietrichson, she's the femme fatale of the character, like she's the femme fatale of the piece, and like the sort of like sex and death relationship of that film is her relationship with Walter Neff. But like the emotional heart of that of Double Indemnity is Neff and Keys. Like that's sort of like where like it tugs on your heartstrings with that relationship, which is very important.
I think that that relationship is like further. I think that Keys is the most queer coded. I think I doubt you might have said that, but the Keys is so loyal to Walter Neff. He like 100% vouches for him.
I have known Neff intimately for 11 years, and I personally vouch for him without reservation.
That's what's kind of tragic, is that like he vouches for Walter and he says like, "Oh,
we
I'm
have
absolutely sure."
Yeah, we have the scene where Neff is like listening back to like
exactly
his like phone call or whatever, and he's like, I've been with this guy for so long,
it's like almost suggests that Keys could be like in love with Walter. Keys could and it's this blind loyalty that is also a part of all of the straight relationships that we see in noir films. Phyllis and Walter,
and like it's like Keys sees the best like in Neff. He's like, hey, he wants to he wants him to like change jobs and like work with him, not because it's like better like money wise, but because it's I think you're better than a lot of the people here.
All right. Now, what do I say to Norton? What about this job I want you for?
I don't think I want it, Keys. Thanks just the same.
Well, fair enough. Only get this. I picked you for the job not because I think you're so darn smart, but because I thought you were a shade less dumb than the rest of the outfit.
Like, so I think like, it's very obvious that Keys thinks, I thought very highly of Neff, and like even in the end.
It's almost like a type of respect that it's like Keys. Walter, I don't think is queer coded, or I don't think Walter and Keys had any sort of.
I disagree. I feel I feel like Neff isn't like as explicitly like maybe portrayed, and like he's portrayed as a very masculine figure, but I feel like just by having this close relationship with Keys, like he is queer coded to a degree, especially if you talk about the last scene, like where like he says outright to him like I love you too, without Keys actually saying I love you.
That's true. Hello, post-production Justin here. I agree with Bryan to some extent because Walter does say I love you to Keys twice. Once when he's impressed at Keys as he's ranting about how no one is good at their job anymore and he must do everything around the office.
Calendar check with the World Almanac's calendar.
Now, that's enough from you, Walter. Now, get out of here before I throw my desk at you.
I love you too.
And the second was on Walter's deathbed.
On the way.
You know why you couldn't figure this one, Keys? I'll tell you. Because the guy you were looking for was too close. Right across the desk from you.
Closer than that, Walter.
I love you too.
So to recap, we heard Walter say,
because the guy you were looking for was too close. Right across the desk from you.
And then Keys replied with,
closer than that, Walter.
At the very least, this implies that Keys has deeper feelings towards Walter, and If you determine the I love yous between the two characters are in fact romantic, it could be concluded that Walter and Keyes are in an intimate relationship.
Okay, yeah, so I feel like that scene in particular is very like queer coded because it's like it's these two men in this like relationship that people could like assume was close friends, but it's very clear that it's like something more than that. Because I don't know a lot. I feel like for men, it's very different to say I love you to a friend than it is to like a significant other. So I feel like there's like a bigger sense of intimacy between those two men than like the people are led to believe.
Mm-hmm. But and the reason I say like I said Walter, I'm starting to come along to you guys' side of this, but I think that my hesitancy is because Walter is so convincingly in love with Phyllis. I think that that's her name, right? Phyllis Dietrich's thing. Yeah. I believe that he.
I mean, like he is like undeniably like showing.
I mean,
like,
yeah, and like he could also have feelings
like,
for both of them.
He's flirtatious, but like it's sort of like this underlying true relationship, this true romantic relationship. Especially if we go, with Professor Manning's idea that that Neff like is like sort of has this fetishisms, has this like fetish for like not having this relationship with like Phyllis, sort of like being in this constant like tension
chase.
If we go with that idea, then like his real relationship is with Keyes.
It's true. It's true. That's a very strong example. And speaking of tension, the other queer coded noir that we're going to talk about is tension. And mainly the main character Warren
Walter Quimby. Is it Walter? Oh, it's Warren. Oh, no, shit, right.
Yeah, Warren Quimby. I think he's queer coded. And then, and to start off, he's very much emasculated in the start of the film, and then his whole arc is that he creates a new character. Yeah, he creates a new like a new man essentially. That identity that is this like perfect, masculine like straight god essentially. And
absolute
that
Chad.
Yeah, absolute Chad. And then and that is what Mary falls in love with. Mary Chandler falls in love with. And I think what's interesting, so first off, we have him losing his wife Claire. Because it's like almost because he's too like effeminate, like not good enough of a man for her.
Yeah,
actually, it's exactly like that. It's exactly.
When you look on the surface of this film, you can look at it as like this struggle of like masculinity.
Struggle for masculinity.
Yeah, which isn't innately queer coded, but I think if we
we're gonna get to the second point, but I also just want to say that like he loses his wife because he's not masculine enough, and then he puts on an identity that is masculine and he gains another girl, and then in the end he almost steps into the shoes of the like masculine identity that he's taken, even though he goes back to his old persona, but he has developed as a man, which sounds so terrible to say, but and one of the biggest queer coded moments in this film is we weren't able to find his name on Wikipedia, but the hairy guy that is having an affair with Claire. They have this fight. That a fight is like it's like weirdly erotic. It's like a wrestle and a roll in the sand. And they are rolling with each other. They're like rolling over at the beach, and he's also sexualized in a sense by showing his body and showing him with like the camera rests on him. I haven't seen the movie in a while, but doesn't the camera like rests on him? It shows him like sprawled out in the beach chair.
But
and he's very hairy,
which is a very particular point because like I guess to be that hairy is to be that masculine. Like we know in that scene, I think we talked about in class, Claire. So we like see Claire. Like,
Claire's the wife.
It's like Claire's like getting off. Essentially, I'm having these two men like fight over her. But I mean, we could even dive a little deeper. Like maybe it's her being aroused by that is sort of like, but it is making that fight even more like sexualized.
Yeah, because of the eroticism of gay or lesbian people. It's specifically in lesbian people where it's like some men have fetishes to watch like women having sex with each other.
Yeah,
but I think that
like
can be applied to this.
Yeah, it's the same thing in reverse.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Like she's getting sexual gratification from watching these two men in like this pseudo-sexual like fight situation.
Yeah. And I don't think the movie suggests that they had an affair or anything, or they actually were having sex. I think it's just this innuendo of their like existence together, because it also is a contrast. The characters contrast each other quite extremely, because one of them is, Warren is at this like emasculated, like won't stand up for himself state, which I think is a bit queer coded because of the stereotypes that still exist today, but probably like were even more, agreed upon, I guess is the word. Back then, at least, I don't know, but and then we have the hairy guy who stole another man's wife and then just looks and just reeks of man. And I think that they represent a gay relation, like someone's perception of a gay relationship, which makes the reading of their fight all the more accurate. Wait, but real quick before we move on, or it's also about trying to fit in. So I think that the tension. So I think that the Warren, the whole objective of changing identities is to move and to be a different person, and then to fit in there, and to like completely uproot his life and like fully commit to this role. And I think that could be seen as a metaphor for having to be in the closet and create an entirely like not you person in order to be accepted by society. So I think that with that in mind, tension is a lot more of a metaphor for like being gay, whereas we have the big clock, which is literally writing characters as gay or queer coding characters as gay. And so I don't actually think the characters in tension are gay. I just think that they are saying something about the experience.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think on that note, about all this gay sex that we've been talking about, that it's time for us to wrap up our conversation, unfortunately. Thank you for another great week, folks, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, wait, we need our special equipment.
We wish. Fuck.
Guess what time it is?
Misconnections.
Yeah,
no fetishes
this week. No, I hate to tell you, but we were unable to find a single fetish within the entire clock movie. And so instead, we came up with the brilliant idea. We all three of us came up with this, and to create misconnections for some of our favorite, most illustrious characters from this class. So, in the spirit of lust, would you like to kick us off, Bryan?
Oh yeah, sure. So this is Cairo from the Maltese Falcon. This is his sort of misconnection that he would even put out there. So he was like, I would like Casper Gutman search for my Maltese Falcon. Winky emoji after. You need the wink.
Wow, winky emoji.
The Maltese Falcon would be like a metaphor for
Yeah, I think we got that.
Wait, can I
just wanted to make sure
that's very good. All right, Dahlia, what's yours?
I said this is from Neff to Keys.
Why don't you settle down and get married?
Would throw a shitty husband off the back betraying for Keys eye emojis to the side.
Who goddamn wouldn't? Keys is a king.
Yes. And here's mine is Janet. could keep my clock running all night long with the winky face
Oh
Oh my
emoji.
god, Justin.
I bet Janeth has the
Oh,
That's so scandalous.
I know. Janeth likes his clocks.
big
They
clocks.
never stop.
Big fucking clock.
All right. Well, anyway, that does it.
All right.
This was a
check out.
brilliant episode. We've spent like 2.5 hours on Zoom, so yeah, I hope you like it, Pew. We had fun, and we will see you all next week.
Everything we do is for you, Hugh.
Goodbye.
Do you want to? Oh, you introduced Millennial Falcon.
Millennial.
Okay, I'll wrap it up and then I'll go to my mouthpiece.
We're taking a break so you can like do. Oh, they look very cute. My roommate cut her bangs. I'm sorry.
Nice. I don't know if you can hear me.
Anyway, you know Bryan's single now, so watch out. The ladies' man.
All right. Bryan,
so yeah, I think just looking over the big clock in general. What is the femme fatale character's name? Do we have her name?
It's Phyllis.
I didn't write it. Phyllis, yeah.